Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Weekly on Milwaukee's ESPN Radio, 1510 days, 1290 nights. I'm the man they call Meathead, joined by first ever WWE Undisputed Champion, Chris Jericho. Chris, welcome to the program.
And the legend, Meathead, and Jericho finally meeting.
Yeah, well, it's not the real Meathead, of course. It's just my mama called me Meathead once, and I had to kind of stick with it. So I guess I'm a Meathead, and I'll stay with it. It's fine. Chris, how you doing?
Good. So you're not the real Meathead. You're not Rob Reiner and All in the Family.
No, but I'm Polish, and I like everybody, so it kind of stuck.
Very nice.
Chris, welcome to the program. We're also broadcasting on pwrshow.com, the Pro Wrestling Report. If you get a chance, jump on over there, www.pwrshow.com. First off, I want to get it started, Chris. November 19th, 2007. How did it feel? Over 2 years gone. How did it feel to finally get back in front of all the Jerichoholics?
It was amazing. I mean, it was a long time coming, and when I left in August of 2005, it was simply for the reason that I was just mentally burned out. I had a lot of other projects I wanted to work on, and after 15 years of being in the business, I just needed to step back and take some time away. And over the course of those 2 years, I got back in the groove again. After I finished writing my book, A Lion's Tale, it kind of made me realize how much I enjoyed being in the business and how much how much I'd accomplished and how fortunate I'd been. And that kind of gave me the spark and the passion to come back again. So it was very cool to be able to come back, and especially to set it up with the Save Us campaign and the viral marketing, whatever you wanted to call it.
Yeah, the viral marketing was fantastic. Unfortunately, for most wrestling fans, I guess they felt, because of the internet, they felt it might have went too long. But it was fine for me. I really dug every week, the fact that you'd get a new video. And here in Milwaukee, actually, is where the video first started. We were sitting, in the crowd watching the show. We look up. What was that? It was great to see.
Yeah, it was just something, it was originally intended to go for a long time. It was one of the things that, Vince McMahon, the WWE management, wanted to have it run later than sooner. And I think sometimes that's okay. I think, there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks that say it went too long or that sort of thing. But I don't really agree, because I think sometimes people seem to have a sense of entitlement that they want to know everything and want to see everything quickly. That's the society and that's the world we live in nowadays. And it's okay to take it back and run things the way they're supposed to run and make things happen the way they're supposed to happen. And, I mean, it could have gone longer, it could have gone shorter. To me, it went the exact amount of time that it needed to go, and it was great, because when it finally happened, people were excited, and it's been hit the ground running and go ever since.
Yeah, no, it felt perfect. And you know what? A lot of wrestling fans, like myself, we're marks. We know we're marks, and sometimes we like to think that we know more, we know better, we know what we should do instead of what gets done for it. I just wanted to let go, kind of like a crash that you're just involved in, kind of like a roller coaster. You just let go, enjoy the ride, and yeah, Chris, I'm telling you, I was on my feet, man.
Well, that was the idea. I mean, that's one of the things I've always been behind it, and there's nothing wrong with people reading the internet and knowing more than they should know, quote unquote, whatever it is. But I like to kind of pull it back. When I was a kid, when I was a wrestling fan, I didn't know anything. I just knew what happened week to week to week. And there's a certain magic to that. It was a little bit more of a mythical experience that you just didn't know what was going on. You would see the story play out the way that you wanted it to play out. And that's kind of what happens in this way. I mean, I think a lot of times people, like I said, they feel that the sense of entitlement to just go on, wrestling, wacko.com and find out all the information.
Yeah, exactly.
This time they weren't able to do that. And I think it frustrated some guys who like to know everything at once. And sometimes, you can open your Christmas presents today if you want to. But where's the fun in that? You got to wait till the 25th, and that's kind of makes it more magical that Christmas morning when you wake up and get to see what you have. And it's kind of what we did with the Save Us campaign, is that we just made people wait, and they thought they knew at a certain point, but they still didn't know for sure. And that's the best you can do nowadays, and that was kind of half the fun of it.
Yeah, it was great build-up. Hey, let's talk a little bit about, how you got back to November 19th, and we'll do kind of a retrospective. Obviously, you had at least come, across everybody here in the States in ECW. You spent a little time there, but I think Jericho, the wrestler, and Jericho, the name, really got known and really, kind of blew up in WCW. And I'll tell you, when I first noticed you was actually when you started giving Dave Pinzer all the suits, because, you were throwing your little tantrums and you were getting all, upset because you were losing matches. That's when I noticed Chris Jericho, and, I've been a big fan ever since.
Well, that was kind of, that was the first real push that I'd ever received. And it was a little bit frustrating to be in WCW because I'd been there for about a year and a half at that point, and prior to that, I mean, I'd been a star, worldwide, from Mexico
right.
to Japan to Germany and all these different places, and getting to WCW and kind of having to sit at the back of the line, which is fine, but getting no upward momentum and getting no indication from the people in charge that anything was going to change. So that was kind of the first push, quote unquote, the first chance I ever had to really stand out. And even then, it wasn't a big one, but it was something. So I took it as far as I could go, and I ran with it, and that was great. I mean, it really took me to a different level. Little known thing though is when I was a kid, from the age of 12, I wanted to be a WWE superstar. And that's basically what I wrote my book about, was my 9-year journey from starting in Canada in 1990 to finally debuting in 1999 with the World Wrestling Federation at the time. That was my mission. And all these other places I worked, I just treated them as the next step to get to the WWE. And working in WCW was great, but the only reason I went there is because no one from the WWE had called me at that point, still after all these years and years and years. So to work in WCW, to build up my name and to do what I could to try and, get more recognition and work on my character and all that sort of thing. When I finally got the chance to go to the WWE in '99, I had so much more experience from working in all these different places that had I not had, I don't know if I would have been able to survive in the WWE, and certainly wouldn't have been able to get as far as I did and become world champion. So it was all part of the big plan, one step after another, to get to the WWE and gain more experience, not just in the ring, but outside the ring as well, and learning about all the different aspects of the business, from the persona and the perception and the charisma and the character. From, when I was in WCW, my ring music, it was called Basketball Highlights number 12, chapters in my book, because they just chose this generic ring.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to ask you about too. Is now your music in WCW, and by the way, you're joining us here on ESPN Radio, 1510 days, $12.99. I'm Meathead, and we're listening to Chris Jericho, first ever Undisputed Champion. But back to the music in WCW, that was nothing more than even flow with done up by somebody else.
Well, what it was is, like I said, I was just going to tell the story, is that it was just a bunch of stock music that was in the Turner system. And I went to the truck one day. My first ring music was awful. It was like some, half-assed, sort of really bad Journey song, like kind of Only the Young, like really, really lame. And finally, after about a year, I was like, I need something better. So they went through their little stock sound system and found this, Pearl Jam Even Flow ripoff. Mm-hmm. Now, about 2 weeks after that, after I started using that music, I was watching Basketball Highlights on Turner Broadcasting, and that was the music that was playing in the background. They would just use that music for sports highlights and use it for whatever. And that's another thing that was so great when I went to the WWE. Everything was so much more specific and originally made just for the guys, and tailor-made. And my ring song that was written 7-8 years ago, Break the Walls Down, for the WWE became became part of who I am as a character, and that's why it's so prominently featured to this day, even on the Raw 15-year anniversary, theme song CD that we just released. It's got some of the best ring songs of all time that were written through the WWE system that were all tailor-made for each guy, custom-made.
Yeah, exactly. How do you get across not only the fact that you have this solid song, which probably could go forever? I was talking to my producer a little earlier, and we were wondering if it's something that maybe, you were going to go ahead and get another song. The song that you don't use as much anymore, you used to use it on a highlight reel, was King of My World, one of probably the best songs I think WWE has ever put out. I mean, Saliva, great band, and they do a great job, and they love wrestling. I mean, being from Memphis area, you got to love wrestling. Do you think you're going to be getting a new song, or are you just going to stick with Break the Walls Down?
No, there's always stuff in the works. I'll probably still use that song, but use an updated version of it. I think that's very important. You don't want to always use the exact same thing. But we've tried other songs, King of My World, and there's a couple other versions that we use, but that one, Break the Walls Down, was the one that people still identify with and still enjoy. That's not to say we couldn't update that, and there's actually a pretty big band in the works right now that's working on doing the new song, which is great. They already did one version. We want them to do another version. So, that's what you want to do. You just want to keep it contemporary and still keep that. It's kind of like when Van Halen did You Really Got Me by the Kinks. It was the same song, but it was a much more high-powered, more higher-octane version that became even more classic than the original.
Okay. One more question, and I've got to ask this, and we just saw this this last Monday on Raw. What are you and JBL going to be up to? JBL, is he really returning back to the ring?
Well, apparently it seems like he is, from what happened at the pay-per-view. he took the chance for me to win the championship away, and then on Monday night when I told him the truth, sometimes the truth hurts about how he's become soft. He decided he wants to get back into the WWE. So that's good. I think it's going to be a very good verbal battle right off the bat.
I definitely would like to see you work that all the way to WrestleMania. And speaking of WrestleMania, Fish and I, we were talking about one of the best WrestleMania matches I've seen in the last 10, 15 years, you and Shawn Michaels. What was it like to, I assume that you grew up just like I did, grew up worshiping, Shawn Michaels for all his in-ring work, for the fact that the guy, you can see the effort that he puts out there every day. What was it like to work with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania?
Well, Shawn was always one of my favorites, even though he's only about 5 years older than me. When I was starting out in the early 90s, I was, obviously was never the biggest guy, and either was Shawn. And that was the first example that I had, him and Owen Hart, that you didn't have to be huge to be a wrestler. And I was a big fan of Shawn's. And obviously, I think if you put a gun to my head and asked me what my favorite match was of all time, I'd have to say WrestleMania 19 with Shawn Michaels in Seattle. And not just the match itself, which was great chemistry. It was the first time we ever worked. A lot of people don't know that. And more importantly, the storyline that lead up to it, kind of the teacher and the student, the hero and the kid that admired him.
Yeah.
I thought the storyline was so good. And like I said, to me, wrestling is all about storylines and all about the way things work as far as leading up to the match. And that's why I think a JBL Y2J feud would be great, because I don't think there's a lot of guys that can talk the way that he and I can. And I think there's going to be some great verbal battles that should lead to a very interesting story and hopefully lead to a great match whenever it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of matches, before we get off, one of my favorites back in WCW, and I'm going to tell you, I understand what happened when, Eddie had passed on. You posted a picture up on WWE.com, which is still one of my favorite pictures of today. All the guys I rooted for in WCW were all in this picture. It was a picture of you, Benoit. It was a picture of Eddie and Dean Malenko, by far my favorite. I know it was one of your favorites as well. And you and Malenko, I want, a good 6 months worth of just back and forth between you guys. Some of the best ever. And the 1,004 holds. Some of the best stuff ever. Yeah. Are you still working on that armbar?
The Mexican armbar, the Finnish armbar, the Russian armbar, yeah. The four of us kind of came to the business the same way. We came from different places, but that's why we became such close friends, because we had all, trained hard, and Chris and I in Canada, and Eddie in El Paso, and Dean in Florida, and then went around the world from Japan to Mexico to Germany to all these different places. And it's kind of become a lost art as far as guys that have traveled the world to learn their craft. And I think that's one of the reasons why the four of us got along so well, was because we had all trained and came to the system the same way, and and all became prominent stars at basically the same time. So we were always very supportive and very proud of each other, because a lot of people didn't understand our style, because it was very unorthodox and very much a hybrid of Japanese and Mexican and Canadian and European styles. And like I said, I don't think a lot of guys will learn the same way that we did, because that's just not the way the business is nowadays. And working with Dean for such a long period of time was great, because he actually he took a sabbatical and was off for about 3 or 4 months. And I think that was some of my finest work, and probably the most over that Dean ever was in WCW when he came back, because I did a full-month program with a guy who wasn't even there, and nobody gave us any input. That was just me and Dean making stuff up every week, and I would just show up and do it, and no one really paid any attention to it. But next thing you know, when he finally came back, people were going bananas for it. I learned a lot from that feud, because I learned that it's possible to get something over even if there's not another guy involved.
All right, let's do a little business again before we wrap this thing up. Raw 15 CDs, some of the best intro songs ever. Jim Johnston from WWE, and actually some actual bands that have helped out too. Tell us a little bit about the CD before we wrap this up.
Well, like I said, the ring music is such an important part of each performer's persona, and what each performer does in the ring is kind of predicated by the ring music that they hear when they see the ring. So I think Jim is very good at capturing the essence and the character of the guy that he's writing the song for, whether it be Break the Walls Down or Austin's song with the glass breaking, or Rocky's song with Rock Says. Mm-hmm. Motorhead's done a great job with Triple H.
Oh yeah, I love the Motorhead stuff.
His power, and so there's a lot of great. It's not just ring music anymore. They're actually great songs that you can listen to side by side with some of the best songs that you like to hear, because the power and the strength and the aggression comes through with each one of these songs.
Absolutely. Chris, I want to thank you for having on the show once again. ESPN Radio, 1510 days, 1290 nights. First ever undisputed champion, Chris Jericho. Chris, thank you for being on the show.
Very cool, man. The pleasure was all yours.